The teacher was sick of sending messages to the student's mother, and annoyed, she shouted at him and threatened that if he did not come to school the next day with his mother, she would kick him out of the class. Luis cried tears of resentment because his classmates bullied him because of his appearance. He came to school dirty and wearing ripped trousers. The boy was only 8 years old. He tried to wash his clothes, but there was no soap, laundry detergent, or water in the house. But how did the boy come to such a life? And where was his mother? His mother's name was Maria, and when she was only 17 years old, she was orphaned and went to the city alone. There she lived as best she could, living off small part-time jobs, sleeping on the street, and often going hungry. Until one day, a woman spotted her on the roadside. When she talked to Maria and heard the girl's sad story, she sympathized with her and promised to give her a job in her big house in a small basement room. Her name was Paula, and she was sympathetic to the girl's story because she had once been poor and had had to work hard to earn her living. When Maria started working in her house, the woman realized that she had made the right decision to hire her. The girl was very accurate and was excellent at cooking. Only Paula and her husband lived in the house because their sons were already adults. The eldest lived with his family in another city while the youngest studied abroad. For almost 2 years, everything was going great. Paula even offered to buy a small house that she and her husband had lived in when they were young, and Maria gladly agreed. She moved into it a year and a half later, and the payments for the house were 80% of her salary. But she was pleased because since the morning she went to work where she could eat for free and wash her clothes, she had nowhere to spend the rest of the money, and with such a small income, she even managed to save some money. 2 years after Maria started working in the house, the landlady's son returned. Seeing the girl, the young man lost his head at her unusual beauty. Maria was a charming girl, and this caught Adrian's attention. But unfortunately, his intentions were not noble at all. He only wanted to have fun. He was too arrogant to be seriously interested in the poor housemaid, and he was already engaged to the daughter of an influential deputy. Adrian began his flirtation with Maria 7 years younger than him, and they secretly went on dates. The poor girl thought her dream had come true. She was in love wholeheartedly and succumbed to the persistent attraction of the guy agreeing to intimacy with him. 3 months later, Maria was pregnant, while Adrian was calmly preparing for his wedding. The girl confessed to Paula about what happened between her and her son, and she promised to help her, but she immediately made it clear that her son was marrying the deputy's daughter, not her. Maria was depressed and felt unhappy again. But what happened next shocked her even more. One night, a drunk Adrian broke into her house and insisted that she forget him and not disturb him in his life. He told the girl to sell the house his mother had sold her as soon as possible and move elsewhere, or he would find people who would quickly deal with her and prevent her from having an everyday life. "You've already profited enough from our family. Piss off back to your village," the angry man said. A frightened Maria complied with his demands. She sold the house and left for another town. Paula tried to find the girl but failed to find her. 5 months pregnant, Maria opened a small stall where she sold vegetables, and the business was pretty successful. The house she bought was small but roomy enough for her and the baby. She lived alone, with no one to take her to the hospital or meet her from there after a difficult birth. Still, the girl was happy because the baby was born healthy and he had a roof over his head. The boy grew up while Maria was at work, taken care of by Maria's friend and neighbor Carla, whom Maria became friends with when she moved to a new place. When the boy was 1 year old, Maria started taking the child to work. She also arranged for Carla to work in her vegetable shop, and the boy was looked after by the two mothers most of the time. A few months later, Carla's fiancé, who worked at the local bank, visited them. He advised Maria to open a savings account to secure her son's future, which seemed like a great idea to the girl. Maria started saving money and gave it to Carla's fiancé so he could put it into the savings account. At 6, little Miguel began attending a private school, which was quite expensive, but Maria did her best to give her son the best education possible. Her business became very successful. She already had several outlets in town, and Carla's fiancé started working for her as a manager. But despite Maria's best efforts, Miguel was not considered one of them at school, and many parents were against the idea of some peddler's son studying with their children. But the teacher who taught Miguel was a very kind woman. When she found out that Maria was a single mother who worked without rest to give her son a better education, she decided to help her and helped her to get a discount for the boy as an up-and-coming student. Maria started saving even more money for her son's future, but after 6 months, she fell ill and couldn't even get out of bed. so her friend Carla had to take care of her and the child. The girl had to do both businesses and take Miguel to school. The doctors couldn't figure out what was causing the woman's illness. She was suffering from severe headaches, and her son cried watching his mother suffer. Carla's fiancé persuaded Maria to sign a power of attorney to manage her bank accounts and business for himself on the pretext of making her job easier so as to not disturb Maria unnecessarily. A few months later, the poor woman died, although the cause of her ailment was never determined. Carla told Miguel his mother was asleep and they would take her to a peaceful place where she could rest forever. The next day, the woman was buried, and the boy cried desperately, but his nanny and her fiancé told him that he shouldn't be sad because his mother was just sleeping. A week later, the boy woke up in the house alone. Carla was nowhere to be found. The girl had disappeared, taking almost all her belongings from home. The only room from which nothing was missing was the boy's bedroom. The boy also found a note in the kitchen saying, "Dear Miguel, I had to go to another city for a month because of your mother's business. Don't get upset. I will be back. Don't tell anyone that you live alone in the house or they will take you to an orphanage." After reading this note, Miguel cheered up, but his hopes began to fade when a month passed and no one arrived. There was no one else to take him to school, so he was always late, which made his teacher very angry. She vouched for him, but the boy did not live up to her expectations. Soon, she noticed that Miguel began to smell bad, so the woman sent a note to his mother asking her to wash her son. The teacher constantly wrote letters in the boy's school diary for Maria, but she never responded, which made the woman even angrier. Miguel continued to do well in school, but became a little absent-minded. One day, his teacher called him to the blackboard and scolded him in front of everyone, saying he was not taking care of himself and came to school like a brat. She did not know that the house where Miguel lived had cut off the electricity and water because he had no money to pay the utility bills. He used to fetch water from neighbors' gardens and look for food in the rubbish bins. When it was time for the school exhibition, the boy could not present his project because he had no money for the necessary materials. "You let us down again. I promise I won't leave it like this, and I don't need such a dirty and lazy student in my school." She grabbed him by the arm, led him out of the classroom, and wrote in his notebook, "Please, if you don't come to school tomorrow, don't send your son here again. The way Miguel comes to school is inappropriate." The boy was mortified, ran out of the school in tears, and rushed to the cemetery. He began shouting to his mother, "Mother, get up, you've rested enough. You have to go to the teacher and tell her I was coming dirty because you weren't home." The cemetery keeper heard the boy's screams and cries and called the police. As soon as the teacher discovered what had happened, she went to the police to see the boy and fell on her knees in front of him, begging for his forgiveness. Miguel was standing in front of the teacher and could not stop crying. Journalists found out about Miguel's story and made a report. The police launched an investigation. They accused Carla and her fiancé of stealing Maria's money and business. They also discovered that they had poisoned the poor woman deliberately and that her death was not an accident. For this, the criminal couple got a long term in prison. Miguel's fate was quickly clarified, as Miguel's teacher decided to adopt the boy and give him all the love and care he hadn't received since his mother's death. But that wasn't all. Sometime later, already elderly Paula saw a story and picture of the boy on the news. It caught her attention how much he looked like her son when he was a child. She visited Miguel and did not doubt that the boy was her grandson. However, Miguel continued to live with his foster mother, and his grandmother took care of his future so that he would not need anything. Miguel's father, Adrian, never wanted to communicate with his son. However, Paula was not even upset by this fact. She had long been disappointed in her son and wanted Miguel to grow up as a different person. That's all, friends. Share this story with your friends and family. Write a comment and like it. Bye.